Alright, Shalom, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. All praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, as well as double honors and salutations to the elders and apostles of the nation of Israel, better known as Great Millstone. Salutations and shalom and honor to you, sincere brothers as well, who push this word in truth and in sincerity. This lesson, I guess you could say, is more of an introductory to what the British exit is, and it goes into how the EU operates. It's a pretty good documentary. It's been out for a while, and there's just some key points I wanted to highlight and bring to the forefront. So without further ado, I'm going to play these clips and go through this information as quickly and thoroughly as possible, because it is a lot of material.
People might not understand exactly how the functions of the British Constitution work, but they get the gist of it. Once every 5 years, we go down the school hall or to a church, we put a cross in a ballot paper, they're all counted up, and the chap with the most votes wins. We get that. You try working out how a European Commissioner is appointed. It's positively Kafkaesque. You can't actually get your head around who does what, why, and who is answerable to whom.
The European Union, which imposes laws on 28 countries, is made up of 7 main institutions, which include the European Council, the Council of the European Union, the Court of Justice of the European Union, the European Commission, and the European Parliament.
Do you know the difference between the European Council, the Council of the European Union, and the Council of Europe?
It's a very good question.
Tell me how many presidents there are in the European Union.
How many presidents?
Yeah.
I'd guess at 1.
There's 2 presidents, for goodness sake. I don't know what the difference between the 2
4.
presidents is. There's 4 presidents, you say.
There are squads of committees and presidents of this and commissioners of that.
The expression I really hate is pooled sovereignty. It's bollocks. The people of Slovenia have no more idea than the people of the UK and the people of Sweden or the people of Spain what in fact is going on.
I wouldn't profess to understand the detail of how it all works. And I think part of that is deliberate.
One side knows. One side is a priesthood and knows how it all works. And the rest of us, ordinary citizens, don't know how it works. A massive transfer of power takes place.
It was devised to make sure that the great mass of the people could not control government ever again.
Problem number 2. For a democracy to function, you need to know who's running it.
A democracy only works if you know who your representatives are.
David Cameron, tough, tries to hide it, probably quite a nasty piece of work. Tony Blair, oily. There is only room for one in the lifeboat, Tony Blair. The ordinary voter, who's going to hand them all this power, can make up their mind whether they like them, dislike them, because they see them in the papers, they hear them on the radio, they watch them on the telly.
Do you recognise this man?
No.
Do you recognise that man?
No.
I challenge you to name almost any of them.
Do you recognise this guy?
No. There's that chap Juncker. Is he one of them?
I didn't know whether it was just the British being a bit thick, so I thought I'd ask some folk in Brussels.
Yes.
Martin.
So like, hey, that just hey, that might be a Jake. He's the only one who acted like he knew what it was. You know, he noticed everyone else just didn't know. This guy, you know, he might be a Jake. You know how Jake is. They always want to say they know, but they don't know.
Martin, can you tell me who that is? No.
Who are all of these Eurocrats? Who are they answerable to?
Ah, but here we come to problem number 3, accountability.
Would it help if you knew who they were? Because you don't have any power over them, so what's the point?
In the EU, there's a thing called a parliament, but it's not a parliament as we know it. In the EU, the parliament isn't in charge.
Have you ever known anyone know who their MEP is? Nobody does. It's because we know that they're not actually being voted into a meaningful position of lawmaking.
This is the only parliament the world's ever invented where you cannot initiate legislation, propose legislation, or even the repeal of legislation. All of that comes from the unelected European Commission.
So you can't propose a law and try and get it passed?
No, absolutely not. Parliamentary democracy, once every 5 years, you can throw everything out of the window and start again. With this, once something is European law, there is nothing through a democratic process the voter can do to change it.
The people whom we elect to go to Brussels have almost no power at all. They do what they're told.
Got even less power than the House of Lords, for goodness sake.
Our votes for these people are pointless. They are fundamentally pointless.
The European Parliament is an irrelevance. The European Union bureaucrats.
All right, so like, I'm going to stop right there and play another clip that breaks this down a little bit more as well. It's like a 3-minute video, and it just kind of puts a lot of things in perspective. Okay. Hey, so like, I just want to say, this bitch Babylon, Esau's kingdom's going down, so shalom. All right. Freedom of movement, that's like immigration, okay? This trade, freedom of trade, goods and commercial and services and capital. We're going to go back to that other video and you're going to see what the EU has done to Britain since they joined. Okay, now in the last video clip, they explain these bodies, and you'll see it with the, I guess you could say, the picture will make it more Okay, now Nigel just explained that all he does is go there to sit there to vote to pass the shit, so they can't decline it. And you saw the three bodies, you know, and everyone's saying like, who do these people answer to? And it showed you that it's a fucking, as Apostle Hard would call it, a kangaroo court circus, a kangaroo, you know, courtroom circus. And you know, this all goes into usury for the most part. Okay, a lot of this is just usury, and this devil's kingdom, man. This is how he wants shit to work, and you're gonna see that this shit doesn't fucking work. Okay. Okay, so you see that like a club, EU members have to pay their dues, right? They gotta pay your dues to stay part of it. Now, that's you're gonna see the usury. You'll see it. So they pay 12.9 billion, and in return they receive 4.5. So they get a third of what they put in. So you see all the money that Britain puts in, and even though they put in that amount of money, they're fucking pardon my French, they're hurting bad, and I'm gonna show you how and why they're hurting this bad. Let me get it to a pretty decent spot here. You know, they do a pretty good job with explaining most of this stuff, okay? And I hope the volume is appropriate.
Minister, you might say, but how many? 4, 10, 100? 10,000. There are 10,000 people here paid more than David Cameron. That's 1 in 5 of everyone who works for the EU. If you're an EU official, there's the relocation allowance, the household allowance, the family allowance, the entertainment allowance, the private healthcare allowance, the private education for your kids allowance. The healthcare allowance includes free Viagra. You would have thought that would come under entertainment. If you're an MEP, you get an extra £250 a day for being good enough to turn up, another £41,000 a year on top of that to cover phone bills and computers, and another £225,000 a year on top of that to cover staffing costs, which in years gone by often meant spouse or children. And to cap it all, they've decided to charge themselves a special low rate of tax. But it's not just the officials and politicians who benefit. The EU diverts great rivers of taxpayers' cash to the tax-consuming middle-class intelligentsia in our sprawling, publicly funded establishment.
The European Union is very good at purchasing the loyalty of powerful and articulate interests in all the member states.
When we hear great public institutions, quangos, museums and campaign groups, waxing lyrical about the EU, we have to remember the EU gives them vast amounts of our money.
The EU gives shed loads of our money to local authorities and to universities and to art groups. And
see, Britain's losing a lot of money fucking around with this Salakia. Britain's losing a lot of money messing with this EU, man, and they don't want to deal with it, you know. And the book of Daniel, it talks about the 10 toes, 5 strong and 5 are weak, and this is one of the strong toes that doesn't want to support this crumbling body that it's a part of, these crumbling feet that it's a part of, man. At the end of this kingdom or queendom, Esau's queendom.
Opera companies.
And that then provides this chorus of noise in favour of the European project.
Every charity over a certain size is getting money from Brussels. Every NGO.
We see EU largesse effectively buying opinion.
You know, what we see here is really a racket. It's become a very good way of taking money from the general population and handing it to people who are lucky enough to be working for the system.
The EU likes to advertise its generosity. Here in the northeast, for example.
European Union investing in your future. Isn't that good of them? I wonder where they got the money.
The Sage Arts Centre at Gateshead, we're often reminded, was built with the help of EU money. But what you're not told is that if you live in the northeast, for every £1 that comes from the EU, you have to pay the EU £2.30 in tax. But that's not the only price the Geordies have to.
Part of a debate that will.
You see that that tax. That
good of them. I wonder where they got the money.
Okay, so he just exposed it, which we already know.
The general population and handing it
to
people who are lucky enough to be working.
At Gateshead, we're often reminded, was built with the help of EU money. But what you're not told is that if you live in the northeast, for every £1 that comes from the EU, you have to pay the EU £2.30 in tax. But that's not the only price the Geordies have to pay for EU membership. I'm heading down the river to the mouth of the Tyne.
Okay, so Remember the other video that was talking about goods and services. Well, here's a case study. Okay. So I'm gonna let
The
this
reward for giving up.
I'm gonna let something pass outside.
The reward for giving up our sovereignty, we're told, is greater influence in Europe. To see how much influence we have, I've come to the place I grew up. For centuries, fishermen's huts called shields lined the River Tyne. From them came the names of the towns that straddled the mouth of the river, North and South Shields. The seas here are rough, but the water is rich in mackerel, haddock, salmon, herring, cod, skate and shrimp. By the early 20th century, 14,000 tons of fish a year was being landed here at North Shields. There's a daily fish auction here still, in a building part funded by the EU.
£24 in, 24 you back in, 24 in, 25, £25. 40 quid for them. 30 pound for them.
Look at this. This is their fish market, man. Look how empty that building is. There's nothing going on inside.
In a corner of one of the halls sits fewer than 100 boxes, part filled with fish. A dozen or so fishermen and merchants surround them.
£26, 27, £27 yen, 28, £28, 29, £29, £30, £30.
74-year-old fish merchant John Ellis has been buying at this auction since the 1950s.
Better play, £6 with it.
When I started working down here, there was about 200 firms working on the quay. There was haulage firms on the quay who had 30 and 40 wagons that used to ship the fish away.
And how many boxes would there be in the market then?
In them days, 8, 10, 12, and then you would get also you get 1,000.
12,000 boxes a day?
Uh-huh.
So of different place?
Hell, the next man, you couldn't get moved. Now there's, well, I think the average for the year, it'll just be about 200 boxes a day. So it's quite nothing, isn't it?
So you see that? EU is just making it worse for Britain. It's going to make them weak. So they got to separate, right? As the prophecy in Daniel says, right? This is Daniel's 2 and 43. I'm gonna get to the point. I'll just read the whole thing. It says, "And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men." Here's the point. "But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay." Okay, so it's not working out. This Britain being part iron, and these other countries that are just sucking it dry. Okay, they're clay, and they're not. That doesn't make a good weapon. That doesn't make a strong foundation. Okay, so this kingdom of men is gonna fail, and the kingdom of the Most High is being established. So from there,
when Britain joined the common market, it lost control of its fishing grounds. When quotas were imposed, several other European countries lobbied the EU for Britain's fishing rights to be divided up between them. The British government was powerless to stop this.
The EU is just obliterated the English fishing industry.
Too small.
Matter of fact.
But if we left, would we cope? Are we too small? If we're outside the EU, will anyone trade with us?
Right, so, Britain is asking itself, okay, what are the immediate effects and what are the long-term effects? And this is one of the long-term concerns is, are they going to be able to cope with not being part of the EU? When you look at the numbers, you would think, carnally, yeah, you should, because you put in, 12, and you get back 4, you lose 2/3 of what you put in, so you should be okay. but they're worried about who's going to trade with them. You've seen their fish markets. They ain't got nothing to trade. Okay, now this is all a setup, and we're going to get to that also. This is all by design of the Most High, and put into these men, especially these men of power, Edomites, that are ruling in these seats, to bring all this to bullshit, because he thinks he's going to establish an even better kingdom than what he was given when he brings in that RFID chip. He thinks that's going to solve all his problems.
To find out, I'm heading to a European country which has steadfastly refused to join the EU. Switzerland. It's very pleasant arriving in Zurich. The station's lovely. The bit round it's lovely. In fact, everything's lovely. But then, this is the wealthiest city in the world, ranked as having the highest quality of life in the world. All the cliches are true. Everything is so neat and efficient. The people are so polite and obliging. And the buildings are beautiful. This place is wealthy, and it's obviously been wealthy for centuries. I want to know how the Swiss are managing to cope without the glorious benefits of EU membership. So I've come to one of Zurich's many lovely coffee houses to meet the veteran Swiss economist and writer Beat Kappeler.
So Switzerland is not in the European Union. Is that a problem for you?
No, because Switzerland has free trade agreements with many countries in the rest of the world, with Japan, China, Latin America.
We're told we need to be in the EU for trade. But Swiss exports per head are 5 times higher than ours. In fact, they're about the most successful exporting nation in the world.
Okay, now real quick, it's showing their exports are higher than Britain's, right? So let's take a look at what Switzerland exports. Okay, let's see. The European Union is Switzerland's largest trading partner. Okay, and Switzerland is the EU's 4th largest trading partner. Switzerland accounts for 5.2% of the EU's imports. Mainly, this is what they provide: chemicals, medicinal products. There goes that Viagra, right? Machinery, replacing people. Okay, replacing workers. Instruments and timepieces. Everyone knows about a Swiss watch, right? In terms of services, the EU's exports to Switzerland amounted to 67 billion in 2008, while imports from Switzerland stood around 47.2 billion. Okay, so they're exporting to Switzerland $67 billion. Okay, while they're only importing 47.2. Okay, so Switzerland is making good money off the EU, and it looks like Britain's realized that. Okay, but look, they're not going to be able to prosper, man. This is it. This is the end of their kingdom as a nation of people, not as individual tribes or individual. Yeah, you could say they have their own, because like Ashkenazi, okay, is one particular group. Okay, so they're not gonna. Well, Yahweh Shai said it best: a kingdom divided cannot stand. Right? Satan is divided against Satan. How is his kingdom gonna stand? He's gonna ruin it for himself.
Then we're told we need to be in the EU for jobs.
We have a very high labor market participation. 83% of all people in working age work. That's much higher than the rest of Europe.
Switzerland has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world, lower than any country in the EU.
Hey, there you go. You 2/3 go be a bum and beg in Switzerland, man. There's only a 4.5 unemployment rate. You know, I'm sure they're willing to toss you $1 here and there.
Don't be fooled by the mountains, the cows, and the cuckoo clocks, which are German, by the way. Switzerland is an industrial giant. You might have heard of Nestle and Novartis and Roche. the mining firm Glencore, Liebherr Cranes, the high-tech engineering firm ABB, and of course every posh watch firm you can think of, from Rolex and Omega and Tag Heuer to Patek Philippe and Zenith and Breitling. These are all world-beating giants.
Just look at the most valuable companies in Europe. Novartis, Roche, Nestle, they're all Swiss. Yep, Europe's biggest companies aren't even in the EU.
Zurich is also one of the world's largest financial centres, despite having a population of less than 2 million.
Now, you notice they mentioned the companies. Now, there's articles out there showing you the companies, because Britain is leaving, certain companies are leaving the EU, which goes into the whole money. Britain paying 12 billion and only receiving a third. Okay, they're putting in what they want or what they can, their dues are, and they're only receiving a third of what they put in.
With global firms like UBS and Credit Suisse.
Per million of inhabitants, Switzerland has more multinationals than, I think, all other countries.
No surprise then that Switzerland is about the richest country in the world, with a GDP per head around twice as high as ours.
I believe GDP is a gross domestic product, if I'm not mistaken.
To make the point that actually if we left the EU, we'd be just like another Switzerland, I think is totally bizarre. It is one of the most prosperous countries in the world.
Switzerland doesn't just do a bit better than us, it does fantastically better than us.
Needless to say, the Swiss are better paid than us, with average wages again around twice as high as ours. What's more, there is far greater income equality here.
Labour incomes are about as equally distributed as in Scandinavia.
If you think high tax rates lead to equality, look at Switzerland. They have far lower tax rates than we do, but very high levels of income equality.
So, without the EU's help, the Swiss seem to be scraping along just fine. But how do we account for Switzerland's truly staggering success? I've come to the offices of the Swiss magazine Die Weltwoche, or The World This Week.
The reason why Switzerland is successful economically is that Switzerland is not a member of the European Union. In the EU, it's politicians and bureaucrats determining what the people have got to do. I mean, it's a top-down system in the EU, and Switzerland is, I would say, the epitome of a bottom-up system.
Switzerland is the perfect opposite to the European Union's crumbling model.
Switzerland is a kind of super-democracy, far more democratic than Britain, let alone the EU.
Switzerland's one of the oldest constitutions in the world, and it's one of the most democratic. It's not up to the Prime Minister whether a referendum should be held, it's up to the people. You get 50,000 signatures and they have to hold one. The people in Switzerland decide everything.
It's very different to elite conception of politics, where an enlightened elite decides and knows better. Here, the people knows better, and politicians have to conform.
Why is the Swiss state successful? Because our politicians are forced to fulfill the interests of the people.
Key to their success is the fact that their class of bureaucrats and politicians, if you will, is kept on a much tighter rein and much greater control by the public. You simply cannot get away with the kind of grandiose plans that you find, say, in France. In Switzerland, the Swiss public simply will not tolerate that.
The Swiss economy ranks as one of the least regulated in the world. And according to the EU itself, Swiss industry is also Europe's most innovative.
So that's the point. You got to see the difference. Basically, Switzerland is set up to be their Edomite utopia, you know, and everything else is just to move their plans forward, their agenda forward. So, you know, hopefully, brothers were inspired and edified to, you know, go into this topic a little bit more. You know, get into these prophecies a little bit more. And this was all through the spirit, you know, of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, with a simple question on, you know, the study of words, on taxes, you know, because without really looking into it, and just at face value, what is the British exit? You already knew it was about money, you know, and that's what makes it strong, is its economy. Okay, so when it goes into the 10 toes, um, you know, it was just something that came to mind, and from that small thing, found other articles and you know, other pieces of information, and you know, just kind of took, you know, the spirit led me to those videos and information. So with that, hopefully brothers were edified and motivated, you know, seeing that these prophecies are coming to pass. You know, there's no reason. You're already on a list. If you're in a camp, you're already on a list, man. Everyone's on a list right now, and only those that are on the list of the elect of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai are going to be saved from these hard times to come. Okay, so death, death to you 2/3. You know, uh, death to you scoffers, death to you heathens. Okay, and Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Tawada for the apostles and elders who push this word in truth and in sincerity. Okay, in season, out of season, and Tawada to you brothers for being there as the body as well. Until next time, Shalom.